Back here on the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the certified Angus beef brand. Bryan Schaff here in studio. Next to me, as always, Chef Tony Biggs. Chef, how you doing?
Hey, great. I am so great. How are you guys today? It's beautiful out in Worcester, Ohio.
It's a lovely day outside.
Foggy,
It's a lovely day outside. And in between us, I guess you could classically say the rose between two thorns, meat scientist extraordinaire, Diana Clark. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. How about you doing? How are you doing, Bryan?
I'm really, really good. And I'm assuming that you're doing pretty well, too, because we're going to talk about a topic that I know gets you a little excited, right? We're going to talk about, I want to take you back, if you will, right? Let's go back to 1999, right? We're going to party like it's 1999 at a time when the most tender cut on the beef carcass was the tenderloin. Does anybody remember what number 2 was in 1999?
Oh, gosh.
Right?
In 1999.
Probably the ribeye.
Right?
Have to be.
But things have changed, right? Did cows grow extra muscles in that time?
No.
Of course not, right? There was this thing that was discovered by meat scientists that for years and years and years had been thrown into the grinder to make delicious hamburgers called the flat iron steak. Mm-hmm. Y'all have heard of the flat iron steak, right?
Everyone. I feel like everyone knows it now.
Yeah, everybody knows it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on all these menus across America. Yes.
Yeah, it's number 2 in the what the Warner Bratzler Shear Force tenderness scale of beef cuts. But the flat iron is the cut that we want to hold up today as the shining star, as the beacon on the hill, as the great hope that there are other cuts out there that maybe you don't realize exist today because you can't order them. It doesn't mean that they don't exist on the side of beef. But guys, before we dig in, we're going to talk about some of these other cuts that maybe you've heard of. Maybe they're mythical. Maybe they come from a unicorn. I don't know. But we're going to talk about some of those other cuts today. But first, let's dive into the story of the flat iron steak and how it came to be. Diana, meat scientist, you guys hang your hat on that thing, right?
Yeah, so essentially you have the NCBA, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and they actually go out and they try to promote beef in terms of overall value. So they want to make the carcass itself more valuable because that's going to go back to the farmers and ranchers raising these animals, and the animals themselves are going to be more valuable. So they had this group called the Beef Innovations Group that got together, and there was actually 2 meat scientists on that team that had already been playing around with the flat iron quite a bit. So it was the top blade at the time, and there's this big heavy seam of connective tissue that runs down the middle. Well, the 2 of them realized that if we remove that heavy seam of connective tissue, we have 2 fairly tender cuts of meat, second most tender cut of meat now in the carcass. So they kind of pushed for that, and they basically NCBA gave them some money to run more research, and lo and behold, wow, this is a great cut and simple to get to. During that time, too, that Beef Innovations Group, they came up with a lot of different cuts that are kind of under the radar, so to speak, that we're hoping to go as well as the flat iron, but it just didn't take off as great. So I think over time, we hope to see more and more of those cuts come to fruition, and that's really at Certified Angus Beef. When people come here, we do try to show them all those unique different cuts because we want to add value to that carcass. We want to make sure that that farmer or rancher is getting the biggest bang for their buck, the biggest bang for their production that they put in.
Tony Biggs, you've been cooking for a long time, man. Tell me about when did you first realize that the flat iron was a thing?
Well, Diana just nailed it. I mean, removing the connective tissue, and you have 2 beautiful cuts of beef. But then I got thinking, looking at that piece of meat and spending a lot of time in Asia, Asian folks, Asian culture loves, that connective tissue. So what we did was at our culinary center is we sous vide the flat iron with the connective tissue 4 hours. It looks rare when you remove it from the bag, but it's completely cooked. And what we did was we put that on the slicer and we made a pho bar with 1,000 different ingredients. Make your own pho. And people went crazy over it, and you had that connective tissue, that gelatin. But what happened was once it hit the hot broth, it melted in your mouth.
It was incredible. The flavor in that was phenomenal.
For shizzle my nizzle, Tony Biggs.
For sure.
But the flat iron steak is one of those that if you ever think back, right? Think back. There was a time when this didn't really exist on the plate. Obviously, it's one of those cuts that some friends of ours say, I wish more people hadn't kind of found it, because the price would still be, it would still be kind of in that bargain basement, like, hey, this is a secret nobody else knows. It's obviously taken off to the point where it's kind of in those mainstream cuts. Although I will tell you, this is a little bit of my aside, I found that I can easily ruin a flat iron, right? If you take it past medium, good night, right?
Yeah, and I feel like, Tony, you marinating one, right? To me, you kind of have to. Sometimes you get that livery flavor to it. If you don't,
Exactly. You just nailed it with the livery flavor. So what we've done is we've done a lot of Asian marinades, actually chili garlic rub marinades, some Texas barbecue marinades. You just hit it. Yeah, it could have a little bit of livery flavor. However, it's popular when you talk to chefs and they go, "Yeah, I've got the flat iron. What else do you have?" Right? I mean, that's going somewhere, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the salmon 35 years ago. Nobody knew it, right? Now it's on the market. You can get it at an affordable price, and everybody knows about the flat iron.
You
now.
can get salmon in a can now. We've not hit flat iron in a can yet, though.
Have not, but it's coming to a theater near you.
Well, let's get into this, right? I know that people listen to us in a variety of different settings, and so we're going to go down through some cuts, right? Cuts that you may or may not have heard of. In the beef game, really, in the cuts game in particular, it sort of exists in a strange cyclical relationship where cuts don't really exist, right? I'm making air quotes as I say that, until big packers are making them. But big packers aren't really going to make them until there's demand. Because if you run through a packing plant, for them to change their processes, to create new things, it's a pretty big investment up front to change the lines, line speed, things like that.
Yeah.
But how is there ever demand if nobody even knows it's out there?
Yeah.
And that's where I think it sort of hits this log jam of cuts like this, unless you can come to Worcester, Ohio. We'll break one down for you, right? We'll put some in your mouth. But we wanted to, I guess, whet the palate of some of you folks out there listening to say, okay, what else is there? What should I be asking about? Because honestly, the more times that you ask, well, the more of a signal is being sent back to the packers that you should probably be participating in this.
Yeah.
Diana, you're the meat scientist. Where do you want to go first, right? What are people missing out? If you are at home, you can write these down. If you are driving, pull off to the side of the road and open up the little notes section of your iPhones and start taking notes. Here we go.
Yeah, so like Bryan said, it's not that the packer is doing anything wrong. The easiest way to think about it, it's taking, if you buy a basic vehicle, or then you could get a car with all the extra bells and whistles on it, you have to pay a bit more to get those extra bells and whistles, because in order to create that vehicle, they have to do a lot of extra stuff. They have to add different parts to it that aren't typically there. So that's the same thing with getting these new cuts. And so once we get that demand created, I mean, to me, their heel, the heel of the animal. So if you are standing somewhere and you go up on your tippy toes, that I'm talking about your calf. That's the heel that we're talking about when we say it on the animal. That has two great cuts in it. One being the braison, which is kind of it's the superficial digital flexor, one of the best Latin terms.
You're
to
getting
say.
a tattoo that says that.
I should. It's gonna go all the way down my back. But that cut alone, you braise that cut, and it is like a lamb shank, and it's incredible in terms of flavor. Tony was talking about that gelatinous flavor in that. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And then also you can get the merlot out of that exact same cut. And it just sits right next to that. It's the gastrocnemius muscle, and you just seam out. There's two pieces of silver skin on either side. You take those off, and that's all you have to do. And it's probably similar in weight, if not a bit heavier than the Terrace Major. So the volume there is not huge. But in my head, if they're packaging Terrace Major and selling that, why can't they package the Merlot? And I know there's a demand with that superficial digital flexor because of the Asian popularity in cuisine that's growing in the United States. You could see it, especially on the West Coast, man. They are looking for those cuts to put into that cuisine. So that is definitely my first one that I would recommend.
Excellent. Sometimes we can be super critical of the people who name cuts, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes the names are meant to have a little bit more marketing value than they actually do in actually describing what the steak is. Merlot could probably fall into that, but that's a pretty good name, right?
I was okay with that actually because it's so dark in color too. It's like oh, and even the Braison like that. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Those definitely are two that completely make sense.
Right, and give us the scientific name one more time of the Braison.
So the Braison is the superficial digital flexor.
You got that?
I say that 1,000 times.
Excellent. So at home, if you're writing that down, right, you can shorten all that and just write heel, right? 4 letters, unless you want to write super digital flexorion.
Like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Yeah, just write heel. You're good, right?
You can write a new song.
Let's change gears. This is a cut that I think a lot of people have heard of. A lot of people have probably eaten it at a time, but to this day you can't order it. Tony, I know you've got a lot of experience. Chuck eyes.
Oh, chuck eyes.
Oh, wow, right?
Unbelievable. Yeah, one of those cuts where it's kind of difficult to get. There's probably 3 or 4 in the going to the chuck and the rib, but boy, is it tender. You throw that on a hot grill. There's some of our partners who just they capture these chuck eye steaks and feature it. It is amazing. You have the marbling is amazing, the fat content, and of course the taste, incredible.
Yeah, and the chuck eye, it's top of mind because if you don't follow Diana Clark on the Instagram, Beef Maven, right? She's got every Wednesday she puts up a different cut, and you kind of have to guess what it is. This week it was the chuck eye, and you actually had a little diagram describing the different cuts in there. It's a ribeye, right?
Yeah, essentially it's the exact same muscles that you find in the ribeye, except you have a larger spinalis. Who's going to complain about that one, right?
Right. We need more spinalis in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to this day, right? The chuck eye, we talked about if you want to get to the Braison, if you want to get to the Merlot, right? You got to spec the heel, right?
Yeah.
The calf muscle. If you want a chuck eye, how do you get there right now?
You got to order the chuck roll, and that's a big piece of meat. But the beauty of it is that there's a lot of other cuts within there that you can also get. So the entire underblade of that chuck roll, that can be cut into Denver steaks. And usually Denver steaks can be easily gotten from the chuck flap. However, if availability of that is low, just buy a chuck roll and you can utilize that whole underblade as those Denver steaks. You also have the Sierra steak. So I call it the chuck flank because essentially it looks like a flank steak, but it's from the chuck. It's a little bit thicker, but eats a lot like the flank steak. The chefs have prepared it like that. And then you can also make some boneless country style short ribs out of that chuck roll. So you basically take that chuck roll and butterfly it out. Incredible. We had a group in and they just were curious. Can we just grill them? I'm like, guys, these are a braising item. No, let's just grill them. They were fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, just that chuck roll flavor, but I mean, it just in a little brick was awesome.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, chuck roast. You can do thousands of things with the chuck roast too. So you could grind it and it's going to be one of the best burgers that you've ever had. So there's so many options within there.
Yeah. So if you are set up, understand, man, the chuck roll is so valuable, right? I think of our pals, Craig Deal. I think of Dave Cocab up in Cleveland, guys who have really adopted this methodology of really it comes down to creativity and economics, right? Mm-hmm. You can make a lot of money, but there's also so many different things in there. If you want to make sausages,
yeah,
right?
I mean, come on,
Love
who's
me
going
some
to
sausage.
complain about that?
The original po' boy is made with a chuck roll.
Really?
Yes. Braised,
yeah,
right? Braised with wine and mirepoix vegetables, carrots, onions, celery, and it's cooked down and it's shredded, and that is the original po' boy sandwich in New Orleans.
That's awesome.
Using the chuck roll.
We've
done it here before. It's
Yes.
been amazing.
Oh man,
it's glorious. Moving on, Diana, you're the meat scientist. Where do you want to go next?
Let's talk about the mouse because I feel like that is one that just is overlooked and people maybe even. I think more people know about it than not, but they're just like, yeah, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. But really, it's something so simple. And to me, you break down top sirloins, you're going to have that mouse muscle. So if you're food distributor, you got it in your cut shop, you're already breaking down top sirloins to make those sirloin fillets. What are you going to do with that mouse muscle? A lot of times it gets thrown into grinds. If you're not grinding in-house and you're just selling it off as trim and it's going to go to a cooker of some sort. But we actually have McGregor's up in Canada, Toronto, that they're actually breaking down that top sirloin, and they have people that are purchasing the culotte. They have people that are purchasing the top sirloin fillets, and they have people that are purchasing the mouse muscle as well.
Yeah.
And it's actually going through, and this is a restaurant that is throughout Canada, Joey Restaurant Group, that actually serves that mouse muscle on their menu. They call it the steak frites, I believe, and it is done phenomenal. And just to think that that's a muscle that typically would go in the grinds, now is served as a center of the plate item. And it is, in terms of tenderness, it's as tender as that culotte. It is definitely a tender piece of meat. Mm-hmm. So I'd go for it every time.
Yeah, and it's something that until now, but to a point that I think you started on was the idea of, the chuck roll. If you're going to get that whole piece, and takes a little practice to figure out how that comes from. The sirloin is a really easy piece to take apart, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Very easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And, going back to the idea of cut names, right? They nailed the Merlot. The mouse, it must have been an intern.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. We always joke that there was, it was way back when that they were naming the mouse, like 1900s. And so they threw the muscle on the table, and they said, "What should we call it?" And then a mouse ran on the floor, and so we said, "Oh, mouse!" And then...
Or they were watching, that's good. Or they were watching the Disney Channel. It's Mickey Mouse.
Right?
Yeah.
I always like to think of my mice wearing little ping pong ball helmets, riding a little motorcycle underneath my kitchen appliances. But you have your mouse, I'll keep my mouse. So the mouse muscle, again, if you do want to get to that, any meat shop is bringing in whole top butts, breaking them down. Yeah. If you're a chef and you want to do the knife work yourself, though, does that generally come on it?
Yeah. If you buy a whole top sirloin, that mouse muscle will be on there for sure. And we've got merchandising sheets, too, that can help you break that down. Feel free to reach out to us at any point. Yeah.
Excellent. And from a menu standpoint, you mentioned Joey calls it steak frites. This is top sirloin.
Yeah. You could call it sirloin. I mean, that's how you explain it. Don't go with the mouse. Like, clearly, we all know that's a terrible marketing idea.
Don't go
right?
with the mouse. No. Yeah. You're not going to sell any.
No,
right?
No. I mean, come on now.
We're not here to tell you what to do.
Truth
but
in
we're
menu.
telling you what to do.
It's not a mouse.
Yeah.
And it's the right size, too. So somebody is going to sit down in that restaurant and say,
"Is it?"
You don't say.
Yeah.
We'll cook up anything these days. Uh-huh. All right. What else you want to talk about?
What do you think?
How about that hind shank? That's starting to get legs.
Pun intended.
That was excellent.
The shank, right?
Yes. You have to make a T-shirt out of this now. Right?
Yeah, I think so.
Right? If you go back to season 1 of this podcast, we actually have an entire episode built around the shank, where we sat down with our pal Vinoy Rogers from American Kitchen in Orlando. He's got a bunch of different applications that he uses that hind shank, including using it whole. That's kind of a new thing, right, Tony?
Amazing, yeah. We Diana, she cut a few one day as we're doing cutting in our meat lab, and she throws them over to us, and she says, "Hey, do something with this." And so, this is the beauty about working at Certified Angus Beef. We get to play with a lot of different cuts, but she throws this hind shank over to us. Of course, we're going to braise this item, right? Because it's a little bit, it's a little tough. We braise it, and then we put it into a 125 degree oven overnight. And it was just about that time where it's just about to fall off the bone, but we pulled it just in time. We chilled it. We brought it back to temperature, and we said, "Boy, this looks really good, but it's missing something. It needs a jacket." Right? So what do? The classically trained chefs put a little bit of mushroom duxelle, wrap this in puff pastry, and we have a hind shank beef Wellington.
It's awesome.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
It is awesome.
So we served this to 350 of our great friends at our food service leadership conference down in Florida, and they were just absolutely blown away. We picked a head person at each table. They did the they carved it for each one of their participants. They went crazy. Can you imagine this beautiful 7-inch bone popping out of a beautiful dark puff pastry?
It was
just amazing.
Yeah.
And we have a company right now that's looking at using this in some local grocery chains around the country, and so we're going to stay tuned for that. I'm not going to mention that too early, just in case it doesn't happen. But if this does, you're going to be able to find this in some pretty high-end stores, chefs. So stay tuned.
Yes.
Yeah. Diana, tell me about the makeup of that hind shank. Obviously, my brain goes to, because I'm a big dude, right? I'm like, marrow. Just put it in a Dixie cup and let me go, right? Right, but when you order a hind shank, what are you getting?
So you're getting, it's literally the bottom half of the so it's right below your femur bone. All right, so you're going to have those bones there. It's your long marrow bone. A lot of times before they would take that and split it for those canoe bones, but they do sell just hind shanks. And usually you'd see that a lot in retail. You'd see those cross-cut shanks that used to be really popular, just braised, sliced down, but instead of slicing it, we're just leaving that whole, and you have that shank meat that's wrapped all around it. So there's a lot of collagen in there. And when Tony says that he had a person fabricate or carve, it was like the easiest carving thing. I literally took a fork and just pulled down and then put it on someone's plate because it just shredded apart like no other. And it's just that, again, that gelatinous goodness that we talked about from the flat iron, but it's in that shank muscle. And especially as we approach these winter months, it's just that hearty meal that feels good. It feels like you're doing something right when you're eating it.
Yeah, and unlike some of the other things that we've talked about, you can actually order hind shanks.
Yeah.
Not everybody may stock them, right?
Yeah.
There may be a little bit of a wait, but those are out there, right?
Yeah, you definitely, and specifically hind shanks. Now, the foreshanks are harder to get. I think those mainly go into retail or they're boned out and sent overseas. But the hind shanks definitely are available. Yeah.
Excellent. What would be a reason that somebody would specifically ask for a foreshank?
So a bunch of retailers were very keen on asking for foreshanks. I don't know why, but I think it's because they've always had them, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. So they just were used to having the foreshank. But they usually, when we have a retail group in back, they ask me why they can't get foreshanks anymore. I'm like, well, what's the difference? You got a hind shank. It's got more meat on it. Anyway.
That's right. Right. Yeah.
But
and if you are complaining because a cut has too much meat on it, you're not our people. You have to go.
You have to go immediately.
Right.
The door's right there.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, guys. I'm sorry. Right. More meat is always in fashion. Can we talk about one of my most favorite cuts in the whole world? And I remember having this conversation almost a decade ago, before this was something that was really being made. I had a friend of mine who was actually a neighbor at the time who said, why is there pig bacon, but there's not bacon from cattle? And I never really got a really good answer. And the reason, really, I guess nobody was just making it at the time. Because anatomically, right, pork belly, beef belly, anatomically they're very similar, just different sizes, right?
Yeah.
Can we talk about the beef navel?
Yeah, that's a great cut. And it's funny because I think way back when it was produced, I mean, the short plate was produced pretty regularly, but then it just didn't really gain any popularity in the U.S., and so it started going overseas more than anything. And it's kind of funny because then we start seeing this huge hit for bacon, and there's just a lot of people wanting more and more bacon, and then we start realizing that there's this avenue of people that do want bacon, but they can only have beef bacon, and so then we start moving towards, all right, well, hey, we do still have those short plates or beef bellies. Let's utilize those. And so that's when this started coming together. And it's kind of funny. We had a couple of chefs coming and asking us where they could get a beef belly from. And Dr. Phil Bass happened to be walking around at JBS Hiram plant. And all of a sudden they were cutting beef bellies on the floor. And he's like, what are you doing with those? He's like, oh, we don't really, we're just throwing them into 50-50 trim. We don't really have an outlet for them. He's like, well, hold on, we can connect these dots here. So through that relationship, and that's kind of the cool part with Certified Angus Beef, is we have a really great relationship with our packing partners. So we can help communicate to them when there is that need, that demand. And man, I'm so happy that beef belly has taken off.
It's delicious. Tony, I have seen this used in a lot of different applications, right? It's not all going to beef bacon. Actually, our buddies Brett Sawyer and Vince Tomasic up at the Plum in Cleveland, they would take a whole navel. They would actually split it because it's such a large piece when you get the whole plate in, and they would braise it, and then they would press it for 24 hours. Actually, they would press it using a sheet pan, and on top of the sheet pan was the complete Ferran Andrea cookbook set because they're heavy. so you're right. There's more than just recipes in those books. They are also great for pressing beef belly. They'd pull it out, and then they would slice it, a half-inch thick, and give it a quick fry on the flat top. So you get this soft braised, but there's also a thick seam of fat that runs down the middle of it that had broken down, and then you're making it crispy on the outside. And it was just like all of the best elements of why we choose to eat meat specifically, all on the plate. Was really my introduction to the beef navel. You've probably seen umpteen different. I mean, what are your favorite applications for it?
Well, Diana kind of hit the nail on the head where it's just one of those artisanal things that's gaining popularity, not only in the U.S. but the world. We have a company. We have a beef bacon out called Schmaken, and it's just taking the Middle East by storm right now. But getting back to Bryan's question, we have done a lot of great things. Bryan was he was going towards the pork belly, the braised pork belly, then seared. We've done this with the beef bacon. So we've done this with the navel, where we sous vide or braise the navel and then compress it. But we use number 10 cans. Those are pretty heavy, so we don't have the those kind of books. We want to get ruined. And then we press that, we slice that. So there's a couple of different ways you can do a very, very nice kung pao beef with this, where you've actually sous vide and then you put it into a kung pao XO sauce with lots of soy sauce, sweet soy sauce, XO brandy, a little bit of Chinese wine, herbs, star anise, garlic, the usual suspects, right? And then that comes out, and you can put this, you can sear it really nicely on a flat top. That goes beautifully in a steamed bao bun with a little bit of sriracha mayo and some pickled red onions. We've done this before. Amazing. We've also taken that beef belly. We put that on the slicer, cut it about a 1/4 inch thick, seared it real quick, just with salt and pepper. It's just amazing when it crisps up. We've done potato skins with beef bacon, right? So we've taken the already cured navel. We've chopped it up very, very fine to put it in the deep fryer or fry it the way you want it, so it's very, very crispy. Put those into potato skins with lots of cheddar cheese and dip those into a sour cream chai. Diana, you're looking at me
I'm
like
drooling.
Are you hungry right
I
now?
am.
Are you hungry?
I
right?
am.
Yes. So amazing, great things with the navel. I mean, not only just bacon, but you can just take this to another level. Okay, how about scallops wrapped in beef bacon?
Oh.
Okay, with a little bit of what did we do last month? We did candied beef bacon,
Yeah.
right? So we take the bacon, we cooked it on the screens, about 450 degrees, gets it really crispy, and then we made a chili garlic sugar that went over this with a little bit of brown sugar. And to top it off, we put little microgreens on top of this, right? Or we did one with sesame seeds, black sesame seeds. We dipped one in chocolate, okay? Can you imagine that? And a little bit of microgreen on top of that. Chefs, amazing. Not only that, you can do a bacon clothesline. You got me going on here now.
know.
You really got me going.
He's
I'm on
had his
fire.
he's had his coffee this morning.
Put that on a bacon clothesline. What a great picture. You can serve this in your bar. Amazing. I would highly recommend you. Like Diana said, call us, email us. We'll give you some great tips.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The two uses, I shouldn't even say the uses. Some of my favorite ways to eat that. I feel like we could be here for an hour and be like, let me tell you about my favorite things that I've eaten. Chef Peter Rosenberg, right? Who we mentioned here. He's never actually been on the podcast, but he's a certified Angus beef chef. He will just do a flat on. Let's treat it like pork belly. He'll score the top, and it becomes just so succulent. It's so good. And you're just kind of snapping off
Pop
those
those,
little the scored. The other application that I really like, and if you are from Texas and you eat barbecue, I want you to right now just turn the sound down. You don't want to hear this, right? burn ends, right?
Yes.
Right, and it's one of those things we tell our friends. We never tell it to people in Texas because they're going to be like,
Or Ray Lampy.
yeah,
Don't tell
yeah,
Ray.
don't tell Ray Lampy, right? But if you are outside of Texas and you need more of if there's not enough brisket point, right, who doesn't love burn ends, right? For me, right, I love you brisket, right? But the best part of the brisket for me is the brisket point. It's the fatty side, right? Love my brisket slices with the nice seam of fat down the middle, but the fatty brisket side that's my jam all day long. You can make burn ends out of beef belly.
It's amazing.
Yes.
So
It
good.
is
Oh, guys, we have approached the 30-minute mark, which all of our studies have shown. That's about the maximum amount of time people can stay in a room with myself before I start to get really old. So I'm going to turn you guys loose here on this episode of the Meat Speak podcast. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. Please know that if this is your first time catching us, you can find us across all of your major podcasting platforms, Apple, Google Play, Spotify, or by visiting certifiedangusbeef.com/podcast. Also, give us a follow on the gram. We've got our own Instagram channel right now. It's at meat_speak, I think. Might just be at meat speak. I don't know. I'm not a millennial. I'm a Gen Xer, right? I just do what they tell me to do. But give us a follow. Obviously, follow myself. Follow Chef Tony. Follow Diana on the Instagram. And honestly, we've only touched upon 5 different cuts that are not necessarily in the mainstream. If there are other cuts out there that you are vaguely familiar with, but you don't really understand them, shoot us an email. Yeah. Shoot us a what's the millennial term? Slide into our DMs on the Instagram, right? And we will get back to these. Sometimes, honestly, it's just a confusion in how it's named, right? Because some cuts are named by their Latin name, some cuts are named by their marketing name, some cuts are just called a mouse, right? Some cuts, they're just named after a rodent. So yeah, so sometimes we should do an episode all about how cuts get their names, right?
Goofy names.
Yeah,
Yes.
put that one on the books. Until next time, guys, we appreciate you guys. Chef Tony Biggs, meat scientist Diana Clark, all of you at home in your cars. Hopefully you're driving safe. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, guys. Surprise! Right, you thought we were done, but like any good artist in the 1990s who put out CDs, if you are still listening and you didn't just instantly pull the plug on your phone, right, we've got a bonus track here for you, because when we hit the wrap, Tony had one that clearly we had forgotten.
Yes.
Tony Biggs, what do you have for us?
Well, I was at the Culinary Institute of America this week with my colleague Peter Rosenberg, and one of the instructors, Brendan Walsh, who has been to the CIA, been to our Worcester campus, he mentioned beef tendons, and I said, "Oh, you mean chicharrones?" He goes, "Yes." And I said, "Yes, we have perfected." One of our chefs here, Gavin Pinto, was challenged with the task, and he came up with amazing beef tendon puff, which we deep fried, and then I think he made a koji cream with it. And I thought we should bring this to your attention because this is one of those hidden gems.
Yes.
If you don't want pork chicharrones or pork tendons, the beef tendon is something to look at.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that you can order this. We've actually never tried, to be honest, but I know you can order chicken tendons. So I'm assuming if there is a person that wants beef tendons, they go out there and ask for it, they definitely can get it. And basically imagine if you are a Taco Bell fan, those cinnamon twists, the cinnamon swirls, that's exactly what these looked like. But then he put this distilled vinegar, that vinegar seasoning on there. And
Amazing.
It's like a malt vinegar powder.
oh,
Yeah.
yes, it's so good.
Amazing.
Like, you can't stop once you start.
But let's talk about the anatomy of this, right? Pork chicharrones, pork rinds, right? Or right? Well, at what point?
Rinds.
Yeah, at what point in our, I guess, is it the Mason-Dixon line where it goes from chicharrones to pork rinds, right?
Yeah, I think so.
They're all the same, right? But anatomically, we're not using pig tendons.
Yeah,
Pork
we're
tendons.
usually fat for your pork chicharrones.
Yeah.
But for beef, I think that we've tried fat. It's not pork fat's way more unsaturated. I was surprised when Gavin just said, "Save me the tendons. I want to do something with it." And of course, you see his mind working when he asks that question. So I give them to him excited because I know something great is going to come out of this. And then he brings back, like a couple of days later, these tendon puffs that are incredible.
You just want to you want to go to the vending machine and
Yes.
get a bag of them, right? Tony, are you familiar with the process? You got to dehydrate
Yes, I
them, right?
am. So picking Gavin's brains, kind of like the chicharron. You bring these to a boil, or you can sous vide them for a long period of time. We actually just boiled these because you have to break them down. We dehydrate it in a dehydrator, which is probably overnight, and then get those real dry. And it's just they kind of look like shrimp chips. If you go to an Asian market and you're buying these puffs that you throw into the fryer, they puff up automatically and they're beautiful in color. Well, it's the same process. Put these into the fryer, these puff up automatically, and you have a beautiful beef chicharron.
It's incredible.
Delightful.
Amazing.
Delightful. Puff tendons, beef tendons, right? Highly suggest them. I've eaten a few of them in my day. We'll go ahead and full disclosure. So there you have it. If you stuck around, right? If you stuck around through the bumper music, there is your Meat Speak hidden track. By the way, my favorite hidden track of all time, because they're hidden, right? So not everybody knows they're out there. Counting Crows. They've got a song called Kid Things at the end of their second album. It's just mind-blowing. It sounds like the drums are being played on a 5-gallon bucket.
Oh, that's
Wow,
awesome.
It's that good.
I've done that before when I didn't have real drums. Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, we've already given the official close, so Chef Tony Biggs, meat scientist Diana Clark. Guys, thanks for sticking around. And for you at home, way to stick around, right? It paid off not being able to hit the off button because you were in traffic. Well done. Until next week, we'll see you guys later.
See ya.